One night at the city morgue turns into a real nightmare. It all begins with Amy, who works in the corpse storage room. She is pushing a newly arrived body towards the weighing room, and her co-worker Seth, upon seeing a transparent mask over the face of the corpse, guesses it was a burn victim. Seth calmly removes the mask and sets it aside. Then he suggests that Amy leave early, since in a few hours it will be her birthday. But Amy, being so dedicated, decides to stay the last 10 minutes of her shift, thinking about going out afterwards for a drink with her friends. Then Seth surprises her, calls her over to another gurney, and when Amy approaches, she sees a coffin-shaped birthday cake. She laughs, and amidst laughter and hugs, she thanks Seth for the gesture, even inviting him to join the outing. But Seth declines with a smile, mentioning that he has to work the night shift and that his boss would not be very happy if he leaves. In the office, her boss Holden, who is in a wheelchair, congratulates her on her birthday before informing her that her shift has ended. Amy asks for her phone, which is kept in a safe to prevent employees from taking photos of the bodies and posting them online. Suddenly, the TV shows a news report about a mass murder at the abandoned Blackwell Hotel, attributed to the infamous killer Hand of God Usend. Just at that moment, Holden receives a call from the authorities. 9 bodies are on their way, from the crime scene to the morgue. Amy, instead of leaving, decides to stay to help and leaves the office to call her friends and let them know about the change of plans. Meanwhile, Holden teases Seth, telling him that he's too shy to ask Amy out. Amy leaves a voicemail message for her friend Tamara, explaining that she won't be able to meet them that night. She then returns to the office and hands over her phone to the boss, ready for whatever comes next. In an ambulance, the paramedics are struggling to revive a man. A woman, her voice trembling, asks her colleague if they should keep trying. A few seconds later, they give up and declare the man dead. With a sigh, they head to the morgue. Meanwhile, Amy and Seth are waiting for the last delivery of the night, Jacob Goodnight, the man the paramedics couldn't save, and who is suspected to be responsible for the brutal murders at the Blackwell Hotel. While transferring the body to the elevator, Seth drops something just as the doors close, leaving Amy alone in the cab. When she arrives at the floor, Amy wonders where Seth is, who had said he would take the stairs. Suddenly, Seth appears out of nowhere and startles her, making her jump. In the weighing room, they measure the body and discover that Jacob weighs 145 kilograms and is 2 meters and 13 centimeters tall. Amy leans in for a closer look and hears a gurgling sound coming from the corpse's mouth. Horrified, she watches as the body expels blood, staining her in the process. Seth calmly hands her a dressing to clean herself and explains that it could have been a death rattle. He then tells her to go back to the office while he finishes the job. As Amy walks down the hall, she hears someone calling her from a room filled with bodies covered by sheets. Surprised, she sees 4 bodies rise from the tables, revealing her friends Carter, Tamara, and Kayla, along with her brother Will, who have prepared a surprise party for her. Holden joins the group and explains that he allowed the celebration in the workplace. He also informs everyone that they must hand over their phones to be stored in the safe in her office, ensuring they cannot take pictures of the bodies. Amy, still surprised by her brother's appearance, tells him she didn't expect to see him there, suggesting some tension between them. She suspects it was Tamara's idea, who has always had a somewhat strange fascination with death, joking that her friend probably envies her job. Seth joins the group and Amy introduces him shortly after. Will approaches Seth and makes a passive-aggressive comment about how his sister deserves more than working the night shift at the morgue, making it clear he doesn't approve of Seth for Amy. Seth, visibly uncomfortable, quickly leaves the party, and Amy realizes that her brother probably insulted him. Meanwhile, Tamara, always curious, sits on Holden's lap and starts questioning him about the incident at the Blackwell Hotel. Upon learning that the killer's body is in the morgue, she gets excited and tells her boyfriend Carter that she wants to see it. So, with a hardly believable excuse to go to the bathroom, the couple sneaks away from the party with the intention of exploring the building. Amy, annoyed, confronts Will about what he said to Seth. Will expresses his frustration because she left medical school to end up in a job he considers poorly paid and with no future in the morgue. Amy firmly tells him that she does not live her life to please him or their mother, and that he should respect her decision because she loves what she does. With the tension in the air, Amy storms off angrily, and when Will tries to follow her, Kayla stops him and suggests he give his sister some space. At the same time, Seth mutters to himself as he continues working, pumping embalming fluid into a corpse. Despite her boyfriend's pleas, Tamara stands close to the examination table, looking at Jacob's covered body with a mix of curiosity and sympathy. She explains that by reading about Jacob and his childhood online, she discovered that his mother, Margaret, a religious fanatic, used to torture him and lock him in a cage when he was a child. Tamara gently runs her hand over the edge of the table's cloth covering, and Carter scolds her, to which she replies that he's being overly sensitive. To ease the tension, she redirects the conversation toward understanding the tragic past that led Jacob here, hoping it will bring them both some clarity. While Tamara and Carter talk quietly beside Jacob's body, Tamara notices that the body has disappeared. Carter tries to reassure her, suggesting that probably their friends are playing a prank. Suddenly, the lights go out, and Tamara lights a match. Unbeknownst to them, Jacob is alive and standing right behind them. The killer attacks the couple, but Tamara manages to find the door in the darkness and escape. Jacob then turns on the lights and finds his mother's body inside one of the mortuary cabinets. He sobs uncontrollably, but remembers the abuse he suffered at her hands when he was a child, as well as how he took her life by stabbing a metal rod into her head. Carter, injured, tries to flee, but Jacob grabs him by the shoulder and throws him to the floor. Jacob tells him he has seen the sins he committed and, despite Carter's apologies, strangles him. Moments later, the disturbed man removes the bandage from his right eye, recalling the moment someone pierced it with a metal pipe. He grabs the burned mask from the operating table and puts it on as if it were his second face. He then opens a cabinet full of tools on the wall, ready for whatever comes next. Meanwhile, Amy hears Tamara scream, and when she sees her brother and Kayla kissing, she scolds him for not checking on her friend. Jacob, for his part, goes after Holden, who falls to the floor when the killer throws a hook. Chained to his wheelchair, Jacob hooks Holden's foot with the hook and drags him towards him while the poor man screams in despair. At that moment, the group checks the weighing room, and Amy wonders where Jacob's body is. Will points out the blood on the door of the mortuary cabinet, and to their horror, they discover Carter's lifeless body inside. Suddenly, the lights go out, and Seth checks the embalming machine, noticing it still works despite the blackout. In the weighing room, Will says they must call the police, but his sister reminds him that all their phones are locked in the safe in Holden's office. Before leaving to look for Tamara, Will grabs a scalpel from the table, determined to defend himself. In the hallway, they encounter Holden, who, in his final breaths, receives Amy's apologies as she doesn't know what to do to save him. Meanwhile, Seth checks the fuse box and realizes someone has destroyed it. At the same time, the group finds a distressed Tamara, who tells them that Jacob Goodnight is alive. She explains that she and her boyfriend probably enraged the killer by disturbing the body and being too close to it. Elsewhere, Seth drops his keys on the floor and, looking up, sees the masked man wielding a curved machete. The others reach a locked door that, according to Amy, needs a security key to open, which means they are trapped. Suddenly, Seth appears on the other side and uses his key to join the rest of the group. At that moment, Jacob's arm breaks through the glass and grabs Seth, but they all manage to escape by the skin of their teeth, while the killer breaks down the door with terrifying ease. The group scatters. Seth and Tamara go one way, the siblings take refuge in a room, and Kayla is left alone. Kayla, the blonde woman, locks herself in a bathroom, unaware that Jacob is there. The killer surprises her and strangles her. Jacob throws Kayla to the floor, but upon seeing his reflection in the mirror, he remembers how his mother instilled in him that he was God's hand, which led him to commit murders at the Blackwell Hotel. Jacob struggles internally against Margaret's religious teachings that push him to kill, giving Kayla a brief respite. However, Jacob asks the blonde why a sinner like her deserves God's help as he watches her life slip away. Meanwhile, Seth tells Tamra that she can escape via the east staircase, but he must stay to find Amy. Unfortunately, they discover that Jacob has chained a table to the exit, blocking their escape. They enter a room and Seth tells Tamra to hide behind a shelf while he crawls under an operating table. Suddenly, the killer enters and the siblings see him through a glass partition. Amy realizes that her friends are in danger in the adjacent room and says they need to do something. She bangs on the glass to attract Jacob's attention, but when Tamra tries to escape, the killer catches her and attacks her with the machete, ending her life. Will grabs an office chair and breaks the partition, allowing Seth to quickly jump into the other room. As they try to escape, Jacob breaks through the wall and grabs Will by the neck. Amy refuses to leave her brother behind, but Will insists they leave without him. Scalpel in hand, Will tries to defend himself by stabbing the killer in the shoulder, but Jacob crushes his hand and plunges the blade into his chest. Amy and Seth desperately search for another way out, but only find Kayla's lifeless body hanging in chains against the door. Will's screams reach them, and Amy, determined not to abandon him, breaks the emergency glass and takes a hammer from inside. The pair descend the stairs to a lower level and find Will lying on an operating table. As they try to free him from the restraints, he tells them to run and save themselves. Suddenly, an electric knife pierces his chest, and Jacob flips the table, revealing that he had been hiding underneath it the whole time. Amy tries to fight the killer, but when Seth tries to intervene to save her, the deranged man wounds his shoulder with the electric knife. They take refuge in a fenced area, but Jacob knocks down the door as if it were nothing. The pair stop to rest in a deserted corner, and Amy weeps in anguish, lamenting the death of all her friends, including her brother. Seth comforts her, promising he will never leave her behind and that they will find a way out alive. Just when Jacob is about to catch them, Amy finds the right key and manages to open the door, giving them a breather in their desperate escape. In the embalming room, Amy is worried about Seth's wound, saying it needs cauterization before he bleeds out. Seth, trying to distract her, asks why she left medical school. Amy responds with a touch of dark humor, mentioning that she realized that in the end, everyone ends up in a morgue anyway. Then, in a lighter moment, she asks if he has his wallet, and he jokes that it's completely empty. Amy, smiling, comments that this does not sound promising for someone who wants to ask her out on a date. Hinting that she is aware of Seth's feelings for her, she tells him to bite on the wallet, sprays an inflammable substance on the wound, and ignites it with a lighter to cauterize it. Shortly thereafter, Amy tries to open a window, but can only get it halfway open. Seth, seeing that he can't get through, tells her to take his car and seek help. Although Amy protests, Seth insists it's the only option, and they share a kiss before she slips through the small opening. However, when Amy senses that the killer is approaching, she climbs back in through the window. Jacob breaks the glass and the pair stands against a wall, trying to remain unseen. Suddenly, Amy remembers another exit they haven't tried yet. They move quickly towards a door on the other side of the building, hoping it's far enough from the deranged man. But just when they think they're safe, Jacob's arm breaks through the door and stabs Amy in the stomach with the machete. The killer opens the door through the hole, and Seth, panicked, runs for his life. In the office, Seth hits Jacob with a chair, causing the machete to fall to the floor. However, when Seth tries to grab the weapon, Jacob steps on his hand, lifts Seth with terrifying ease, and hurls him against the wall, leaving him stunned. With difficulty, Seth limps back to the embalming room, trying to escape through the broken window. However, Jacob grabs him by the leg and drags him back inside. The killer, with brutal strength, takes Seth's leg and slides him across the floor, causing a shelf full of jars to collapse on him. Jacob lifts him up again, throwing him to the other side of the room, right next to the embalming machine. Taking advantage of a moment of distraction, Seth sticks a needle into Jacob's torso and turns on the pump. Immediately, The killer convulses as blood and blue embalming fluid gush from his orifices until he finally collapses to the floor, apparently defeated. Later, a grief-stricken Seth returns to Amy's body, closes her eyes, and gives her one last kiss, saying goodbye in pain. Heartbroken, he limps out of the building and gets into his vehicle. He drives until he reaches a gate that needs to be opened manually. Getting out of the car to remove the latch and move the barrier, he notices with horror that the back seat door of his vehicle is open. As he backs away, Jacob suddenly appears behind him, grabs his head and gouges his fingers into Seth's eye sockets. Seth screams in pain and terror, trapped in Jacob's brutal attack. The scene fades to black, leaving the audience in suspense.